All right, good morning. I hope that you can see me this morning. Let me know. Make sure we're not freezing or anything like that. I am actually on the iPad this morning. For some reason, I was able to get on there. I don't know why. So let me know. Say hello when you get here because sometimes I can't see everybody. And we're going to give it a chance to actually start to populate a little bit because it did come on a little bit early this morning just to get some folks rolling. We had a couple of technical difficulties over the past few times we've done this, only because there was some, I don't know, some kind of issue going on with the feeds and getting on all that kind of stuff. Good morning. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Good morning, everyone. It's coming up pretty fast and furious right now. Good morning. We have one question in the queue, and good morning. Good morning, Harry. By the way, speaking, Harry and Karen McClung, I want to thank you guys publicly. Now, this is what's interesting. And by the way, your coffee and your mug will be featured on Morning Brew too, if you do this. But Harry and Karen can you all see my mug? I love this. This is like one of my new favorite mugs. Area 51. Warning and restricted area. So they got this for me, and I'm drinking something called Black Dog Coffee that is from the Black Dog Coffee Company that is from West Virginia. And then I got this Area 51 mug. So Harry, Karen, thank you so much for this. You know, coffee is my big thing, and so I appreciate it. So thank you for this, and that's my morning brew this morning, Black Dog Coffee, and in my Area 51 mug, and I love it. And also, Harry sent me a picture. He has another friend named Bob, but apparently the guy's an alien at Area 51, so there may be some similarities. I don't know. So anyway, I'm going to answer a question. I have a question, as I said, in the queue, and we'll answer that in just a minute, and we'll start. So if you want to put other questions in the queue, we can do that. Thank you for your prayers. Our staff is, it looks like on the other side of coronavirus right now at the preschool. We have had quite the run here with COVID over the past couple of weeks, and fortunately all of our management staff is now negative, and we are ready to officially start VPK in school this coming Wednesday, tomorrow. So you pray for them. We still have some things, and I'll be going into the church today, and a lot of things still need to be done. Good morning, Kathy, Bobby. I'm trying to. I know I'm not getting everybody that's coming up, but say hello. I'm saying hello to everybody that I can. So it's quite interesting because this has been a real battle for us, and I so much appreciate our staff and our parents and everybody hanging in there with us. This has been the first time we've been closed this long since April of last year. And it's interesting to me because I'm a little weird in that I keep track of some of these things just to kind of, I think, for a matter of self-awareness. And as I said back on Sunday, we were at day 519. Today we are at day 521 since this was declared a national emergency here in the United States. So no one thought that we would be dealing with this long. By the way, speaking of that, I'm going to be talking about, I think I may talk a little bit about anxiety. So if there's any questions about anxiety, that's what I talked about Sunday. There's a couple of things that I've been dealing with as far as coaching with some different folks and things who have been, there's just been an uptick in some things, and I want to talk about that because I think a lot of it is a result of anxiety, and my intention was not to do that this morning, but sometimes those things change, and I'm going to do that here in just a moment. The first question that I had that was actually sent in to me, and let me pull it up. It was Who were the Nephilim? And that's spelled Nephilim. And could Goliath have been a descendant due to his size? So thank you for that question. Oh, let me turn that alert off. And I made a couple of notes just to keep myself on track with this. The Nephilim are first mentioned in Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. And they're the Nephilim were called the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men. Now, here's the thing. There's a lot of disputed, the meaning of this passage has been disputed. Like, what does it mean? It seems like that they were in some way extraordinary. Could have been what we would call giants. But all of them, according to that, would have been killed in the flood of Noah. But there seems to be though somehow that there were some that also existed afterwards. So it's hard to say, but there was an existence of the Nephilim. The Nephilim were basically gigantic warrior people. So what you have is they were superhuman warriors. Could have been a mixture of something divine and something human, and that's where you'll get a lot of this kind of idea of that they were some kind of supernatural, semi-supernatural beings. It's hard to really say that, but the point is they were gigantic warriors. What we don't see is there were descendants of Anak that came from the Nephilim, and in Numbers chapter 13 there is this discussion going on about how the disciples in the promised land, when they went in there not the disciples, the spies that went in the promised land were literally they said they were basically like grasshoppers when it came to the Nephilim. The Nephilim were huge. Of all the giants, though, in the Bible, of course, the most infamous is none other than Goliath. The Bible never uses the term Nephilim for Goliath. Now, Goliath was, when you talk about his actual height, was when you translate all this stuff out, was about 9 feet 9 inches tall. Now you're like, okay, now that could be a little unbelievable, Bob, that there was a 9 foot tall human being. Not necessarily, because as DNA is reproduced, certainly things change. It's like people that used to live at different times in history. People lived really, really long. I mean, there was a guy in the Bible that lived 960 plus years. So there was a time when people way, 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 way back lived much longer. Then there was a time when the average time of people living on the planet was maybe, I don't know, 50. You hear people dying at 40. If you watch our average age, it's going up again as far as the death rate is concerned. So it seems that when you, and my opinion, and that's all it is that I don't believe that the Nephilim were any type of super mixture of angels or demons and men. I don't think it was anything like that. But they were some kind of superhuman because of their size. I think about some of the great basketball players. I grew up watching wrestling, and there was Andre the Giant. Andre the Giant was 7'4" and weighed over 500, tipped the scales at over 500 pounds. There have been giant people like that we look at, and I'm like average height. So when I go up next to the person, I come up to like somebody like that. I come up to like their belly button, or maybe a little higher than that. But I think the average height of a male is 5'9", if I'm not mistaken, right now. But there were times when people were much taller. It's just like there are things change because of nature, because of all of the DNA and whatnot that is out. So the idea here is that there were some kind of superhuman warriors. Whether they were actually superhuman, we'll never know. They were giants. They were warriors. They were people that were feared. So then the question becomes, was Goliath one of the Nephilim from that time frame, which you could probably, just like I would say, gosh, that guy is a giant. You use that term just as a descriptive term, but it's never mentioned that he was actually one of the Nephilim that we see in the Old Testament. I would encourage you to do some more research on those things. They're interesting, always interesting topics, because you just there's things you run across in the scriptures, and the good thing that you have that you're able to look at, and there's so much research and things out there that are available today. When I'm looking for an explanation of something, I always go with what seems to be the clearest and the most obvious. Like, I don't look for something necessarily supernatural unless it seems to be indicated that it was supernatural. The Bible will use a lot of different terminologies to describe things, and so sometimes it's easy to read in to things that maybe are not there. So my obvious explanation here is they were giants, they were warriors. That's how even the spies refer to the Nephilim in Numbers, when they had gone in to spy out the land, and said, we're like grasshoppers, sons of Anak, who were descendants of the Nephilim. They were human beings. And so, but they were giant. For whatever reason, these people produced some huge folks. And then there was Goliath. Goliath was not one of the Nephilim, but he was a Nephilim in that he was a giant, but he wasn't considered. His line was not a descendant of them, but still he was the largest guy around, and they said, okay, you go out and you fight. Also, as you know, though, and I know actually knew some wrestlers that knew Andre the Giant. The man had horrible knee problems and physical problems with joints and hips and all of those kinds of things. And I never actually met him, but big guy. And some of these guys, even Hulk Hogan, I think he's like 6'7" or 6'8". Even today is walking with a cane, probably because of how he got beat up in wrestling. I'm not just using wrestling, but there's basketball players and things like that. But an interesting question, and I so much appreciate that. I want to talk to you about this anxiety thing. There's a couple other things came up after discussions and other questions that I had. Not necessarily questions for today, but my coffee went down the wrong way. It's not coronavirus. Excuse me. How about you notice when you cough or sneeze now, it's like, oh my gosh. So we talked about anxiety on Sunday and what Jesus had to say about anxiety. We talked about the key to antidote to anxiety is to pursue something else, like seeking God and His righteousness. Change your perspective. And I didn't bring any of the research with me because I actually hadn't planned on talking about this, but I've been doing a lot of work with people lately when I do more of a life coaching type thing and work with people who are grieving and stuff. There's so much. In fact, the backdrop of this is this. I got a call yesterday to do the Suicide Survivors Conference again. For those of you that don't know, I used to be on the board of the Florida Initiative for Suicide Prevention. And when we talk about survivors, these are not survivors of people who tried to take their own life, but they are actually, it's for the people who are left behind when someone has ended their life due to suicide. The problem is right now, 2020 was really changed the game. The opioid crisis is at an all-time high. A doctor friend of mine told me a few weeks ago, and I confirmed this from different sources, that, and you have to, the numbers aren't perfect, so if you go, oh my gosh, you misquoted the numbers, let me know and I'll correct it. But I believe that, and I just read recently that they're estimating that overdoses in the United States, drug overdoses, and this is just accident. It may have been accidental and intentional. 93,000 plus people. Now, what that says to you, the difference is that the average is usually around, I think around 40, 50, 60,000. So it was up a substantial portion due to coronavirus, because people that were having trouble normally coping with the difficulties of life wind up then taking more opioids, taking more things to try to numb, not physical pain in that case, but emotional pain. And addiction is up like never before. And I think the biggest challenge that we are facing with this addiction crisis that we are in is we're going to see more accidental overdoses and more intentional overdoses. We're going to see more, continue to see more suicides because of the emotional pain and things that people are in. If you know someone that is dealing with it, I have to say this: it's so important to get them connected to a legitimate group. We used to have AA groups meeting at the church, NA groups. There's so many different groups, and I know people like, I don't like a group setting. I don't like to be in groups and talk about my stuff. Well, the problem is the reason why the group, I should say, why it's a problem for some people, is it provides. It's an accountability thing, because you hear the stories of other people and you're like, it doesn't help me to hear it, but it actually does, because you hear their story and you can also see the same mistakes that they are making. The challenge with when people give up one substance is they will often replace it with something else. I do a lot of work with this in the grief recovery program. We call them STIRBs. I don't call them STIRBs. The Grief Recovery Handbook calls them STIRBs, which stands for Short-Term Energy Relieving Behaviors. You talk to people who, for instance, stop drinking. Sometimes they stop drinking, and then they start smoking, or they stop smoking and they start something else. I remember years ago, my dad quit smoking just like that, and we were all amazed by it, because he just one day said, "Okay, I'm done." And but I remember him telling a friend of his, he said it was like I was in this room and I left the cigarettes behind, and he says I walked out the door and I picked up 20 pounds, because we sometimes replace one substance with another. And it happens to people in that, and happens to people, by the way, with relationships. You get people that are jumping from relationship to relationship to relationship because they haven't actually dealt with the stuff that is going on inside their head. And so it's like replacing one addiction for another before we actually deal with the stuff that's going on. And this is going to become more prevalent. You're going to see it in the people that are around you, the people that you love. And often the warning signs that are there are masked. I'm always amazed by the dumb things that people say to suicide survivors, to the people who are left behind. And I always tell them, and it's shocking when they hear it for the first time, but one of the dumb questions that they'll get is if they've lost somebody to suicide. People will actually ask this question. They will say, didn't you have any signs that it was coming? Didn't you have any indication that maybe they were going to take that step? And of course, that's a hurtful question, because the answer to that is no. But I tell these folks, I said, if you want to take control back of the conversation, look at them the next time and say, actually, we did see the signs that they were going to harm themselves, but we decided to do nothing about it. And then just wait in silence and let them, because people saying dumb things to you because they're trying to help, it doesn't give them permission to make things worse on you. So this whole idea of all these things sort of go together. There's accidental overdoses, there's suicide, there's all of these things, and it goes to the emotional well-being of people. The emotional intelligence, and the key to emotional intelligence is self-awareness. And if you're not aware of what you're doing yourself, get somebody that's close to you to sit down with you but to be willing to listen to them. Like, the worst thing you can do is enable people. When we were, I think I told some of you all the story, but my daughter's now finishing up her master's degree here, and she'll be finished in December. When she first went to college at Florida Atlantic University, they had a guy that came in and started talking about how we actually enable our children. And he talked about helicopter parents. And then he used a new term called lawnmower parents, because actually what was happening is they had, because FAU there were people who lived on campus, but a lot of them, lived in the area. But they literally would have occasionally some parents during the year, if their college age child was ill and couldn't get to class, they had parents that would call. And it wasn't just moms, it was dads, because it could happen with either one. I know they go helicopter moms, or but there's both. There's helicopter moms and helicopter dads, and lawnmower moms and lawnmower dads. And but they said that they would literally get a parent that would call and say, "Hey, is it okay if I come and sit into my son's classes, because he's sick today and I want to take notes for him because I think he's got a test coming up." And one of the professors that was talking about this was like, he said, "I got nothing. Like, what do you say to something like that?" So we spend too many times enabling behaviors that we should confront, and we're usually our own worst enemy when it comes to self-awareness. One of the things that I do in my work outside the church with people is I have assessments that I do that actually, and it's a behavioral assessment that will assess how somebody, their particular behaviors, what their strengths are. It will also do what motivates them. We call their driving forces. By the way, Tony Robbins uses this same assessment when he talks about your driving forces. And then also somebody's emotional intelligence. It'll talk about your self-awareness, your ability to have self-control, your ability to have empathy and motivation, and your social skills. And it'll rate those 5 components, because people just aren't emotionally aware. That's why they jump from addiction to addiction. And that's why, by the way, they jump from relationship to relationship to relationship. It's always interesting to me when someone, you get a divorce one time, and this is no judgment. I'm just saying, you get a divorce one time, there's a good chance that it may not be you. You get a divorce a second time, there may be a situation that you perhaps contributed to, maybe that you're just getting into the same dysfunctional relationships. Get a divorce a third time, and you really need to look at what you're doing. It's the same thing with jumping from relationship to relationship to relationship. People don't know how to drop the emotional baggage, and it's like I always tell folks when they are, in fact, I believe it's AA says, do not even jump into a relationship until you've been in recovery for at least a year. I find that's very interesting, because it's interesting because the emotional baggage we often don't leave behind, and it clouds our continued thinking. So I think it's real important to understand how this emotional intelligence sort of plays in to addiction and all of these other things. And folks, let me just explain something to you. Christians, believers in Jesus, are in no way, shape, or form immune to this. There are so many believers that I knew growing up that had addiction issues. By the way, pornography is another addiction issue that nobody likes to talk about. It's kind of like the shh, but it's a big one. And there's just so much that is out there. And so often what it's doing is those addictions, and it could be something like opioids, but it could be something like food. It could be something else that is consumed your attention, and you may have turned to, I'm going to close the loop on it, because of anxiety. Because we often don't know what to do with our negative emotions, we will reach for a substance, we will reach for an addiction, and it gives us that hit of dopamine that we need for the moment, that gives us a rush, that makes us feel better for the moment, and we go, oh, I'm okay, and then all of a sudden we crash again. So when we talk about anxiety, I think it's really important to make sure that that we are careful about trying to overcome anxiety with something other than confronting the emotional issues that are giving us that anxiety. Learning to manage it without having to go to substances and relationships and other things that create codependence on drugs, on others, alcohol, anything else, porn. All of those things can cause, can just make matters so much worse. And so I would. Is there good anxiety? Yeah, but you know what? I wouldn't, Kathy. That's a great question. The way anxiety is referred to in the scriptures, the answer is no. And I don't know how what we would relabel that. There is I think there's a certain, for example, I don't know what I'd call it, but no matter when I get ready to speak, even if it's at home, at the church where I'm more comfortable, there is a certain amount of anxiety, but it's more of not not worry. It's just it's a heightened state of alertness that actually, in fact, a guy said this with speaking. He says, and I forgot. I'm trying to think who it was. It was a nationally known speaker talked about speaking and how do you get rid of the butterflies. And the guy said, I don't get rid of them. The butterflies are always there. I just make them fly in formation. And so I think that's good, because there's a certain amount of things that allow us that heightened state of adrenaline, of awareness when we're going into a job interview or that kind of a thing. But I'm talking about the damaging anxiety that causes us to go over and over and over again, play things over and over and over again, worrying about 90% of the negative things that are going to happen that never really happen. And so that's a great question, though, because I don't think that anxiety itself is always a good thing. I do think that being alert, being concerned, planning, and all of that's a good thing. But when it steps over into it becomes an obsession, and then we reach for something else instead of confronting whatever it is that we're dealing with. Because we've all got stuff. We've all got things that we are dealing with in our lives. And it's easy to try to numb the pain rather than confront it. And I think that's the big thing. I think it's knowing that we've got pain issues that we have to deal with, and not coddling them, not enabling them, not encouraging them, not allowing yourself to become a victim, and not just accepting when people talk about, well, you have to accept yourself. No, I don't. I don't have to accept my addictions. I don't have to accept my emotional, my emotional, pockmarks, so to speak, the areas that I need to work on. No, I don't need to accept them. I need to be aware of them so that I can change them. And so, because if not, again, what we talked about Sunday is what consumes you controls you. And so once you start to be consumed by that, and then it becomes a vicious cycle where it's consuming, controlling, consuming, controlling, consuming, controlling. So anyway, I know we've been in two very different places today talking about the Nephilim, which was a great question, and then also talking a little bit more about anxiety. And this has just been on my heart just because I've been dealing with so many situations lately, and then the call to speak at the Suicide Survivors Conference in November of this year, which I will be doing, I think, via Zoom. I've agreed to do it. And by the way, we will have people that, if you know somebody that's lost a loved one to suicide, send me an email to info@cbcfl.org. You will actually, these are usually attended in person. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we're going to be doing it via Zoom again this year, which means we can take people from all over the country and, yes, all over the world to do this year. And it's a free conference. So if you know anybody that's dealt with suicide, this conference will be for them. We'd love to have them be a part of it. So make sure that you let me know about that, and I can forward their list to the great folks at the Florida Initiative for Suicide Prevention they're now part of a larger organization, which I'm excited about. And I got a call from our ex-executive director, but still involved in it, Jackie Rosen. Harry and Jackie Rosen, Harry Rosen, way back in 2000 and probably around 2000, 2001, 2002, called me to meet with me. He was the he was the mayor of Weston at the time, or the ex-mayor of Weston, but Harry has been the mayor of Miramar, and then he was the first mayor of the city of Weston. Harry and Jackie lost their son Mitch to suicide many years ago, and it drove them to start this organization. So it was pretty interesting. And Jackie's written a book, and they're just wonderful people that are always giving back and seeking to help folks. And so good organization. So if you know anybody that needs support through this, and by the way, this can impact people years and years later. I'm also, on another side, we've been kicking around ideas. I have not done a grief recovery program, easing the pain of grief and loss, for probably about 5 or 6 years. There has been some preliminary discussions about doing it at our church, but it's for people that have actually experienced loss, and that could be, there's over 40 different types of losses. There's everything from people who lost a pet to lost a kid, and I know you're going to say, but there's a big difference between the two, but not to the person that's feeling it. So divorce, death, overcoming childhood stuff, dealing with forgiveness and all of that. It's a program I've done, over the years. We usually do it just for material cost, and part of it is that assessment that I do. Everybody gets one of those assessments, but it's really not designed to help you deal with others, how to help others deal with their grief and loss, but it's to help you confront and deal with your losses. And it's always an interesting discussion time. And so anyway, all of that's going on. Thank you for watching today. I thought we were going to be done early, but guess what? I kept going, and you hung in there, and I appreciate it. So pass this along to somebody that you know who maybe is got questions about the Bible, like we had earlier, also maybe dealing with anxiety or drug addiction, relationship addiction, all of these things. So much stuff going on, and so many hurts that people are experiencing in their lives. And so that's where God has called us to be a guide to help these people to get where they need to go. So anyway, God bless you. Love you all. Thank you for joining today, and we will see you Sunday.